Hello everybody, John here with Shooting Tips and Tricks, and today I bring you what I believe is the best option for a featureless AR build. We have here the fightlite SCR. It's a proprietary lower receiver with stock. The SCR stands for Sport Configurable Rifle, and it's a really interesting setup they got here. As you can see, the receiver itself is far different than any other or any AR out there, but got the button, the standard AR button. Proprietary trigger group is completely different. The whole thing is redesigned and shift rearward to work with the stock assembly. We got the little old style side to side button safety on the back here with a good positive click on it, and then your regular takedown pins. And this guy will take any standard AR-15 upper. And the interesting thing they have is, well, other than the unique lower, is the bolt assembly here. And this is all there is to the carrier. And it has this little arm in the back here. And what that arm does is it actuates. You look down inside, you can see right there. That's a piston head for the spring assembly, because the buffer doesn't go straight back like on a normal rifle. It actually goes back at an angle like so, and it goes down the stock. Now the interesting setup there with the bolt carrier and this little arm, the assembly is actually quite similar to a semi-auto shotgun. And I'm interested to see what the recoil is going to be like on this guy, because with the buffer system going down at an angle, you're not going to have that direct straight rearward recoiling like on another AR, since everything's in line with the bore, but it's going to actuate some of that impulse down below your shoulder, so it might have an effect on your muzzle climb. It's really interesting to find out. And the only thing with this guy is the trigger they give you is not really the greatest. It's probably about a 4 or 5 pound pull at least, and a bit of play before it releases. Alright, then when I got this, all you get is this whole assembly here, the bolt carrier, the little arm, and the pin here. And then you have to get the rest of the parts for your bolt assembly, which is the bolt head, firing pin, and the little actuator cam for the bolt head. And those are relatively easy to put together, and you won't need the little cotter or the retainer for the firing pin, because this arm, the way it attaches to the back of the bolt carrier, acts as a retainer for the firing pin. So we'll just snap this guy together real quick. It's a simple task. We'll just line up the hole there. Take and drop this guy in. Oh, get it right to the right position there. There. We'll turn him to the side, and then we can drop our firing pin in. And then after that, we just snap on our arm. We'll make sure it's facing down at an angle. And we'll line up the hole here, and it just slides right on through. And the upper assembly should retain that pin, so you won't have to worry about it walking out on you. And I'm waiting on parts to put together a upper for this, so for the time being I'm just going to pull the green upper off of my other AR and toss it on there. Oh, another interesting feature, since you don't have the straight buffer tube assembly and it's configured like normal stock, you can mount your sights right down against the rail. You don't have to have them jacked up for clearance like you would with a normal AR. Oh, taking my pins out here. There's one I'm not a big fan of. The rear pin is flush with the receiver on both sides, so it makes it a little tough to push through. You see the front one, they always stick out just that hair bit, which is just enough to poke through. But you can't quite do that with the rear one. It is a standard pin, so we should be able to, if we decide to do like a pack gun kind of thing where you break it down, we could swap this guy out for one with a ring on it, then we can just snap it right out without any problem. Probably do the same with the front. Take it down, throw it in a backpack, go camping, whatever. Alright, now I'll grab our upper here. Alright, and you can see I pulled off the other sight and tossed this little burris on there because we don't need a sight that's raised up for this guy. And we'll pull out our existing bolt carrier. Toss this guy in. Oh, I want to make sure the bolt head's out. Let's slide them all the way forward. Make sure it's all the way up there. Close that so it's out of the way. Lock in the front pin. Easy enough. Now on the back here, be careful because you have the little cam on or the arm on the back of the bolt carrier, and that guy needs to go down against the pin for the buffer spring. And if you just drop it down, it'll actually stop just above there. Let's see if we can get there. Yeah, you can see it stops just above it there, hair bit. So what I found works really good is you take either a little pocket knife or a pin or something like that, and you just hold it on the top of it like so. And as you move the up or down, just keep tension on it and it snaps right into place like so. There it is. Doesn't look too bad with the green upper on it. Alright. Now we'll take this guy out and put some rounds through it and see how he does. Well, we finally got a bit of sunny weather, so I came down here to the range and we brought down our fightlite lower, and we're going to put some rounds through it and see how it does. Now, since I said before this was a featureless build, as such we can use a detachable mag, I dug out one of the crusty old pre-band mags. So we're going to run that in here and see how the sucker cycles. Now, one thing I noticed right off the bat with this guy is the recoil is a fair bit different and substantially less than a standard AR. I mean, it still has that feel, but with the operating system going down at an angle rather than straight back, the recoil is similar to like what you'd get from a Chris Vector, where instead of recoiling back and with the muzzle climb, it just kind of shudders in one place. And it's a lot easier to get back on target. Alright, we got a bunch more rounds we'll put through here. Oh, safety! Well, 20 rounds doesn't last long. Alright, well that was a lot of fun. Well, I guess we'll head back inside and I'll give you guys my final thoughts on it, and we'll even take it apart and take a closer look. Alright everyone, we're back in the shop here and we're going to be taking a closer look at this guy. And I will say right now I've already taken a poke around in this to see how everything operates, and that's mainly so I can just go through everything and show you guys the mechanics and all of that and how to disassemble it without wasting too much of your time. Alright, first thing I'll go through is the trigger. It's a rather unique system they have here. They've actually got this long transfer bar that goes up the side here and engages with the hammer so to act as a disconnect. And then they've got this cam system that moves the sear in and out of position, as you can see. And when you drop it down to hit the disconnect, it actually disengages the sear so that it unlocks until you release the trigger. Yep. And then we have our buffer in the end there. Alright, now we're going to dig into the stock here and see how it works. Now, we have ourselves a little hex wrench on the back here. Oh, and this bottom screw here, you can see that sucker's pretty ugly. Someone was having a bad day at work. They weren't paying attention with that one. Alright, we got that guy out of the way. Now let's say this butt pad here, this is a solid piece of aluminum and it's been CNC machined with everything. Now it's a nice touch, but it's a little excessive for what it is. I mean, it's just a butt plate. I mean, they could have saved a little bit of money on this and put this effort somewhere more important, like perhaps into the stock, which I will say it's a typical molded nylon fiber reinforced polymer stock. It's like any other. Material's a little bit thicker than your average one, so you knock on it, it doesn't have that cheap hollow sound like a lot of cheap stocks or cheaper ones, but it's still not the greatest out there. Now I don't know if I can swing this around. Yeah, you guys can't see, but the buffer is right back in here, and it's a large nut on the end of the buffer, which I found is actually a 13/16 bolt head, and for you automotive guys, you probably know that as spark plugs. Yep. So we've got ourselves a spark plug socket here, and we can just stick it right up in the back here. Get it on. It's a little bit of a snug fit in there. It's a little bit tight. And we're in. There's the nut I was talking about. We're going to throw it in. And we got our spring. Now this is an interesting one here. They went a little bit cheaper route on this spring. As you can see, the end here, it doesn't have the rolled and flattened end like here, which tells me they're not getting pre-done stretches of spring, because then they would have rolled it on both ends. They're most likely getting here is one long stretch and then just snipping it to length, which is why you have this rough end here. Might fix that on a later date. But it's not a real big issue, but it's one of those little touches that says something about the company. Let's see. Ah. And there's our, I guess it would be a buffer rod. Now I was kind of expecting just like a smaller pin in there, but it's a pretty substantial one, which is a nice touch. It'll keep that spring good and straight when it recoils, and it's greased to holy hell, so we don't have to worry about that thing getting drying out anytime soon. Yeah. Alright, now see if this sucker should wiggle off of here. Yep, there it comes. Boy, they do have a close fit with that guy. Yep, and there's the little spring for the takedown pin. Come on. There we go. There's our buffer rod. And there's our stock. Which, the interesting feature, should be able to get it now. See, up in there they actually have a exterior tube that the buffer rod goes through, or the buffer tube I guess it would be. It goes inside of that one, and that allows when you tighten the nut down to snug the stock up nice and tight. Now we have our little spring and probably a detent in there as well. Won't mess with them too much. So yeah, nicely machined and everything. This guy here should be set in there with substantial force so it doesn't come loose by accident. Maybe even Loctited. I will say with their design, when they changed the angle of all of this, the back here is a lot stouter than on a regular AR-15 receiver. Yep. Oh. Get tension off of there. That pin wants to fall out. Alright, so that's about it for this guy. Yep, typical stock. Alright, we'll get this sucker back together real quick. Now you've seen how all of it works. Alright, now that we've got back together, we'll go over some of my final thoughts on this. All in all, it's a great system, and it's really ergonomic, and with the standard AR upper on it, it's super comfortable to hold. And it sits right down close to the rail. You don't have to mount your optics up high, which if you hunker down on the cheek rest here a little more, you can actually look dead in line with the rail. Well, now the trigger on this is not the greatest. I think it was somewhere around like a 5 or 6 pound pull. A little bit of creep beforehand, but one I did find out is the hammer spring in here is a standard AR-15 hammer spring. So when I seen that, first thing I did was pull it out and swapped it out for a JP, the lightweight spring. And that brought the trigger pull instantly down to about 3 pounds, I'd say. But you still have that same creep beforehand, which we'll probably fix in a later time. Given the design here, it should be relatively easy to clean up these surfaces to give us a little better trigger pull. Now, the mag well on it here is rather snug, which given you only have about a third of the bearing surfaces on a regular AR-15 receiver, it's probably a good idea to have it a little snug. If you had the same loose tolerances, it might wobble around too much and you might get a failure to feed or something. So, little thing, but not a big deal. Now the other one is with the proprietary bolt carrier. Since they mount it to the bottom here, when it recoils rearward, since this is on the bottom, it wants to shove the bolt carrier up. Now just in that little session where I shot about 30 or so rounds, you can see right up here on the top there and over here there's little wear marks on the finish, and that's from the bolt carrier pushing up into the top of the receiver. Now see how that holds up in the long haul, but it shouldn't be a real big issue, but it's something worth noting. Yeah. And other than that, it's a nice system. I mean, the recoil on this is very minimal, and the muzzle climb is almost non-existent. I mean, the shooting I was doing was just at 25 yards, and it was pretty much effortless staying on target. Because, as I've said before, with the buffer going down at an angle, it's directing some of that recoil actually below the line of your shoulder. So it's going to eliminate that need to want to pull upwards. Yeah, it's definitely noticeable. As I said before, the recoil is actually similar to a Chris Vector, where instead of recoiling like a normal gun, all it does is like this little shudder in place. Yeah. And another one I'll note too is about the whole featureless build. As I said, you can, since it's a featureless, you can use detachable mags. Now I'll go into a little bit about the mags, because I had this guy here, this old crusty pre-band magazine. Now, as a lot of you may have known, this year there was a bill that came through to ban pre-band magazines. But here a while back, I think it was probably back in June or July, that one actually got thrown out. And who was it that did that one? Oh, it was the U.S. District Judge Robert Menendez threw out that bill, so we'll be able to keep all of our pre-banned magazines that are grandfathered in. And to my understanding, the grounds behind that was that implementing the ban, there was no evidence that it would have an effect or a positive effect on crime. So, and in order to implement a new law, they had to show some proof that it will have a positive effect on crime by decreasing it. Now, the laws as they stand for pre-banned magazines in California, I mean, to quote the law under possession, it says that large capacity magazines, whether by peace officers or private citizens, is not controlled. And they even put "is not" in bold letters. And that's word for word right off of the DOJ website. And then below that it says the manufacturing, importation into the state, offering for sale, keeping for sale, exposing for sale, giving, lending of large capacity magazines is controlled. So I see you can't even let a friend borrow them. Yeah. And a lot of the things, if you're wanting to do a featureless build, you have to go into all the evil features, as they call them. And that's the stuff like the collapsible or folding stock, flash suppressors, detachable mags, pistol grips, all that kind of stuff. And I do get a lot of customers and people I know ask me about the difference between the muzzle brake and a flash suppressor, because generally law enforcement doesn't know a lot about the difference either. But they actually have it on their website here, the DOJ. They give you descriptions of all of this stuff. Now let's see if I can find it here real quick. Flash suppressors. Any device designed, intended, or to function to perceptively reduce or redirect muzzle flash from the shooter's field of vision. So you see, by the definition, even the bird cage that comes with most AR-15s can't be considered a flash suppressor. Though, I'm sure there's a lot of people that would argue that point. It's probably the same kind of people that think a suppressor silences a gun. But anyways, that's that little bit. And I think that's about all for this one. We've pretty much covered everything. And at a later date I might go over all the BS that we have to look forward to in 2018. But from now, I think that's about it for this video. And as always, if you like it, there's a button down there. If you didn't like it, well, there's a button down there. Anything you want to add, let me know in the comments. Thank you all for watching, and I'll see you next time. Bye. Almost forgot to mention, it doesn't come with the bolt hold. This thing just pulls out. They give you this little block of metal. Why, I have no idea.